The conglomerate heiress burned her hand on a bowl of noodles and poured the steaming hot noodles over the head of a flight attendant. Seeing the miserable flight attendant, she laughed maniacally without stopping. As soon as the plane landed, she was taken away by the police. Before leaving, she even cursed at the flight attendant. At that moment, the video of the rich young lady abusing the flight attendant was uploaded online and immediately shot to the top of trending searches. The heiress was brought back to her country and surrounded by reporters asking relentless questions. She rammed her head into a reporter in a frenzy. Even when facing interrogation from the prosecutor, she arrogantly knocked over a glass of water to express her dissatisfaction simply because she was the heiress of a famous airline corporation. When in a bad mood, she took it out on her husband. As a live-in son-in-law, he only dared to be angry without daring to speak up. This incident caused public outrage. Thousands of people signed a petition refusing to fly with this airline, causing the company's stock price to plummet. The tycoon father blamed his son-in-law for not taking good care of his daughter. Who could understand the bitter feelings of the son-in-law? At this point, Captain Wu Jin suggested letting the tycoon's son handle the situation. The chairman said his son was a prodigal who hadn't studied at all. But after Wu Jin whispered a few words into his ear, the chairman immediately decided to go fetch his son. The next day, the chairman was flying on his own airline to Dubai when he was awakened by the sound of a pig squealing. It turned out to be the voice of a flight attendant named Sun Hee. She was filling in for her injured twin sister who had to stay in the hospital. Since childhood, it had been the dream of both sisters to become flight attendants. Unfortunately, their father, a police officer, was killed while patrolling to save someone. With no witnesses, he was falsely accused and discharged from his position. Since then, the family had lived a wandering life. This also shaped the selfish personality of the younger sister. Unable to pay rent and insulted by the landlord, the younger sister Do-hee slapped the landlord in anger and in the end could only move out. At this point, Do-hee was determined to escape from this poor family. Both sisters were accepted into university. Their mother, due to poverty, couldn't afford tuition for both. The older sister, who had better academic performance, gave up her opportunity for Do-hee. However, the younger sister was not grateful at all. "Don't pretend to be kind. Just seeing you reminds me of Dad, and it makes me really uncomfortable." Since then, Sun Hee worked hard to earn money for her sister's tuition. Do-hee also successfully became a flight attendant for a prestigious airline. However, she grew to hate her mother and sister even more. Even when meeting her sister, she pretended not to know her. She even moved out of the family home and cut ties with her family. From then on, the two sisters lived very different lives. At work, the older sister met her straightforward other half. The two successfully held a wedding. Sun Hee became a virtuous wife and good mother. As for the younger sister, she fulfilled her wish of becoming the representative flight attendant of the airline. That day, as usual, Do-hee had just gotten rid of a stalker who had followed her for 3 months. When she got home, she noticed water in her cup again. Suddenly, the lights in the house went out. A shadowy figure stepped out from the darkness, terrifying Do-hee into a panic. On the other side, Sun Hee's doorbell rang. When she opened it, she saw her younger sister Do-hee. As soon as they met, the younger sister fainted. Sun Hee hurriedly took her to the hospital. Before entering the operating room, Do-hee regained consciousness and asked her sister to go to work for her at the airline the next day. She told Sun Hee to wait at the company's flower garden before 1 o'clock to get something related to the rest of her life. This woman impersonated her sister and went to the airline to work, swiping the employee card recklessly. Sun Hee went to the rooftop and recalled her sister's cold demeanor. She deliberately posed arrogantly while waiting for someone. At this moment, a man walked up. The older sister, afraid of being exposed, reached out her hand, expecting him to hand something over. Unexpectedly, the man pushed her hand away and kissed her. This action left her dumbfounded. Before she could react, a colleague dragged her off to a meeting. During the meeting, the older sister didn't understand anything. She could only smile awkwardly. After the meeting ended, she was pulled onto the plane by her colleagues. Hearing the captain announce the destination was Dubai, she was extremely shocked. The moment the plane took off, Sun Zi, flying for the first time, screamed in fear, startling the passengers in first class. From her colleagues, she learned that this trip would last a week. Thinking about her husband-child and strict mother-in-law at home, she had to find a way to contact her family. Seeing the tycoon chairman using a landline phone, she ran to an empty spot to call her daughter. But after saying just a few words, she was caught by the tycoon's son-in-law. He harshly criticized her and said he would report her to the company's human resources department. Afraid of affecting her younger sister's job, Sun Zi had no choice but to do her best to serve the passengers. At that moment, a lady approached Sun Zi and whispered a few words to her. Then she went to the cockpit to find Captain Wu Jin. It turned out that Wu Jin's mother had arranged a future wife for him and told him to go out for a blind date. In the end, Wu Jin bluntly rejected it. Sun Zi repeated his exact words, even mimicking his gestures and expression to show the lady. After hearing it, the lady turned on her acting mode to gain sympathy. Sun Zi then found Wu Jin and pulled his hand, intending to take him outside, which left Wu Jin stunned in fear. He was known for not being close to women. While trying to escape from Sun Zi's grip, the plane suddenly encountered turbulence and shook violently. During the shaking, the two ended up hugging multiple times. This caused a strange, indescribable feeling to arise in the heart of the older man who had never had contact with women. When he returned to his seat, he was still feeling the aftereffects. Meanwhile, Sun Zi noticed that a passenger was missing from a seat. She immediately went to search in the restroom. Sure enough, she found the chairman inside. Just as she was about to bring him out, the plane suddenly shook violently again. Sun Zi used her body to shield the chairman from falling, while she herself got hit and was left dazed. After regaining consciousness, she helped the chairman back to his seat. At that moment, the chief flight attendant rushed over to apologize to the chairman. The chairman expressed his appreciation for Sun Zi's dedication and instructed someone to take care of her injuries. Seeing everyone looking at her, Sun Zi immediately pulled herself together and began her performance. But before she could finish speaking, 2 streams of nosebleeds spurted out and she fainted. Over on the other side, Wu Jin heard that Sun Zi had fainted and went to the resting room to visit her. Looking at the woman who had just hugged and carried him, he walked closer and stared at her as if looking at a monster. Just then, Sun Zi suddenly opened her eyes and sat up. As a result, the first kiss that Wu Jin had preserved for 35 years was foolishly stolen by Sun Zi, causing the man to flee in terror. The woman credited with saving the chairman was approved to return home for rest. She excitedly snuck away and danced wildly, only to be caught by Wu Jin through the surveillance camera. Thinking about how his purity preserved for 35 years was taken by this kind of person, he regretted it, slapped himself, and said it was just a dream. After getting off the plane, Sun Zi immediately called her daughter to let her know she was safe. At that moment, the tycoon's son Taeyong was sitting on a plane heading home, thrilled at the idea of teasing his father. Just then, someone suddenly struck the back of his neck. It was the chairman, who had seen through his son's plan and came to catch him. He kicked his son down to the economy class to experience real life. As Taeyong cried out for his mother, he spotted the beautiful Sun Zi and instantly switched into flirt mode. Unexpectedly, while drinking water, his father suddenly appeared, scaring him nearly to death. Meanwhile, the mother-in-law, seeing that Sun Zi had not returned home all night, scolded her daughter-in-law for being irresponsible. Seeing her son's indifferent attitude, she angrily raised her hand to slap him. Noticing her son's hair color, she couldn't bear it and immediately went to confront the in-laws. In front of everyone, she said that the daughter-in-law not coming home for the night clearly meant there was someone else outside. Unable to hold back anymore at her daughter's reputation being ruined, Sun Zi's mother grabbed the mother-in-law's hair, and the two got into a fight. After getting off the plane, Sun Zi rushed home. As soon as she entered the house, she was pushed down by her mother-in-law and forced to kneel and confess where she had been. Sun Zi had no choice but to make up a story that an investor had run off with the money and she went to collect the debt. Of course, the mother-in-law didn't believe her and pulled her son aside, saying that ever since marriage, Sun Zi had never worn makeup. Seeing her like this now clearly meant something was wrong. In the evening, the younger sister's phone rang. Hearing the man on the other end say he wanted to cause trouble for her sister, Sun Zi hung up. Thinking about her sister's injury, she suspected he was the culprit. The next day after Sun Zi and her mother visited her younger sister, they went to her sister's place and discovered the whole house had been emptied. At that moment a colleague called and said all the belongings had been moved to Wu Jin's house. It turned out Wu Jin's mother, because of her son's lifelong marriage matter, had rented out all the rooms in the villa at a low price to single female flight attendants. The chairman even forced his son to come live there so Wu Jin could keep them in check. At first he was reluctant, but when Taeyong saw Sun Zi, he immediately thanked God. After finding out Do Hee was a nightclub queen, he decorated Wu Jin's living room into a nightclub party. Music, fine wine, props, games, everything was there. He invited Sun Zi to the party but ended up getting scolded by her. Taeyong considered himself romantic and thought she was pretending to reject him just to be chaste. That damn girl was really adorable. However, Wu Jin, used to living alone, couldn't stand the noise, cut the power using the security system, and demanded that all of them move out. Sun Zi imitated her younger sister's ruthlessness and responded directly, leaving Wu Jin speechless. The whole room immediately erupted in cheers. Sun Zi thought about the last time she was mistaken for her sister and then threatened from behind. She remembered her sister saying it was one of her ex-boyfriends. She opened her sister's phone and found there were up to 800 male contacts. She had no choice but to send a mass message telling them to come to the front of the house to collect whatever they wanted. As a result, several big men showed up, fighting and getting jealous. Her identity as a manhunting queen was exposed in front of everyone. The tycoon heiress was taught a life lesson by a fellow inmate. A series of consecutive slaps brought satisfaction to others. Strangely, she wasn't angry but laughed instead. The corporation also announced her removal from all positions and that no further support would be provided to her. Not long after, the news reported that she had been beaten but didn't press charges. With a deeply reflective attitude and a team of lawyers preparing materials to reduce her sentence, she finally received a lenient ruling. But as soon as she returned home, her true nature was revealed. It turned out everything had been a scheme orchestrated by her husband. Since her younger sister remained in a coma, Sun Zi had to request a long leave. But she was informed that she would miss the chance for promotion, so she gave up. At that moment she received a 2-day, 1-night flight assignment. To hide it from her family, she bought 2 tickets for a hot spring trip to send her husband and mother-in-law elsewhere. But her mother-in-law believed that Sun Zi was definitely hiding something, so she only agreed on the surface. The next day, after putting her daughter on the school bus, Sun Zi went to the shared rental apartment. Seeing the messy house, a homemaker like Sun Zi couldn't help but start cleaning, making the place spotless. Just then she heard the sound of the door opening. Thinking about the fact that her younger sister never cleaned, she quickly hid in the bathroom to avoid being discovered. Wu Jin, just walking in, thought it was the flight attendant who had returned and cleaned up, so he praised her for a while. Then he stepped into the bathroom, took off his clothes, and was about to shower when Sun Zi screamed repeatedly in fear. She awkwardly said she was checking whether there was hot water, then hurriedly ran off. When Wu Jin came out, he happened to encounter the police, who had come to find someone. They arrested Taeyong for fraud and embezzlement by impersonation. It turned out the chairman had discovered his son stealing money and reported him to the police so he could reflect on his life. He even arranged for a streetwise person to teach him how to survive. After being bailed out by his father, he sincerely said he would become a good child and obey his father. Meanwhile, Sun Zi heard from her colleague that her younger sister liked Wu Jin and even saw a video on her sister's phone secretly recording Wu Jin. She began recalling all the strange things that had happened recently involving Wu Jin. She let Wu Jin see a group of security guards surrounding her, and Sun Zi felt she had ruined her younger sister's image. After arriving at the location, the female flight attendants all said they wanted to go clubbing, but Sun Zi wanted to attend the tea tasting event organized by the company. Coincidentally, Wu Jin, who wasn't close to women, also went. The tea master thought they were a couple and told them to taste each other's tea and gave them his blessings before leaving. At that moment, Wu Jin's phone rang. It was his mother asking if he liked any of the female flight attendants. He got flustered and spilled tea on himself. Sun Zi immediately helped him dry off, but Wu Jin thought she was seducing him. He grabbed her hand and rejected her righteously. Just then, Sun Zi's mother-in-law made a video call. In her panic, she accidentally answered the call, and her mother-in-law and sister-in-law saw Wu Jin talking in the background. The sister-in-law noticed that both were wearing bathrobes and quickly took a screenshot to save it. The useless husband, after 7 years of marriage, spent his days obsessed with self-pleasure, never worked a single day, and completely relied on his wife to support the whole family. Finally, for the first time in his life, he went to a job interview but still did not give up his ultimate goal of not wanting to strive. When he got home, his mother and younger sister told him something had happened to his wife, and he immediately cried like a child. On the other side, Sun Zi was sitting on a flight home. While bringing coffee to Wu Jin, she was called to handle an emergency. It turned out an elderly passenger had motion sickness and vomited, creating an unpleasant smell that quickly made the surrounding passengers scatter. Sun Zi should have assigned another female flight attendant to handle it, but instead she did it herself, making Wu Jin and those around feel incredulous. When the flight landed, she carefully helped the elderly man change his shoes just as Wu Jin saw her. In his heart, he began to change his view of her typically cold and arrogant personality. Sun Zi went to the parking lot to meet a mysterious person who had arranged to see her, but she was suddenly hugged tightly from behind by an older man. Sun Zi countered with a defensive move to subdue him. It turned out to be a high-ranking pursuer from the company. As a result, this incident alarmed the mysterious person, causing him to flee. Sun Zi chased after him into the car and struggled with him, but was kicked out of the vehicle by the man. In the urgency of the moment, she grabbed the dashcam. When she got back to the apartment, she received a phone call from her daughter. Learning that something serious had happened at home, she was told to come back. As a result, she was questioned in turn by her mother-in-law and sister-in-law about why she was with another man in the middle of the night. She had no choice but to explain that the homeowner where she worked as a nanny was supervising her work. Although there were many loopholes, the mother-in-law chose to believe her and told her to go into the room and explain clearly to her son. The terrible husband immediately burst into tears and snot to gain sympathy. Sun Zi was once again defeated by his acting. The sister-in-law took the opportunity to install tracking software on Sun Zi's phone. The next day, Taeyong, who had just been bailed out, had his financial resources cut off by his father. He, completely worn out and disheveled, walked home from the police station but was mistaken by the female flight attendants as a scammer and almost kicked out. Sun Zi, full of compassion, suddenly switched to witch mode and scolded her colleagues for their coldness, ordering Taeyong to stay. The co-workers were confused by her act of kindness. Since when did the cold witch help others? Taeyong found Sun Zi to express his gratitude and saw her watching the recorded footage, so he helped trace the phone number from the car. Sun Zi then called the mysterious man to give a warning, but the call was hung up. As she stepped outside and called the police, she was interrupted before she could finish 2 sentences. The mysterious man pulled her aside and restrained her. Just then, Wu Jin returned from his jog and saw them. At first, he thought the two were being lovey-dovey early in the morning. As he got closer, he realized Sun Zi was being restrained. When Wu Jin shouted stop, the man tried to fight back but was taken down with a shoulder throw by Wu Jin. After taking the man to the police station, Sun Zi thought the matter of harming her younger sister was over. Unexpectedly, a high-ranking company executive came to the station to explain that the mysterious man was an internal employee of the airline and that it was all just a misunderstanding caused by an argument. He pulled Sun Zi aside to talk, saying he would give her share of the money. If she made a big deal out of it, they would all go down together. Sun Zi, still confused, didn't fully understand the situation. When she got back to her room at home, she discovered an extra suitcase on the bed. She opened it and saw it was full of money. The woman, dressed neatly for bed, received a message. Despite it being 3:00 a.m., she still had to put on makeup and go out for an appointment. Just newly hired Do-hee wasn't noticed by her colleagues and had no choice but to use tactics to stay updated on the latest movements of the leadership, creating problems to help them solve. As a result, she rose quickly in her career, only to become the heiress's lackey. Thierry, just released from prison and in a bad mood, came looking for Do-hee. Without saying a word, she slapped Sun Zi as an appetizer. Sun Zi was utterly shocked. The department head told her to quickly kneel down and beg for forgiveness, ordering her to obtain the resignation letter of the flight attendant who caused Thierry to go to prison. Otherwise, she would be iced out. At that moment, the older sister also felt the bitterness in her younger sister's job. At that moment Sunzi's mother-in-law and sister-in-law went to find her terrible husband and told him they had tracked Sunzi's location. She was at a high-end club, surely partying with another man. They even brought the in-laws along to witness it. Sunzi had already returned to the shared rental apartment when the doorbell rang. Wu Jin saw Sunzi's expression as she went to open the door, and thinking it was her guest opened it. The mother-in-law and the others stormed in like a hurricane and came face to face with Wu Jin, who was not properly dressed. The terrible husband, angry and embarrassed, threw a thunderous punch that knocked Wu Jin down. The mother-in-law immediately rushed forward and yanked Sunzi's hair hard, while the sister-in-law took off her slipper and began beating her in the face. Seeing such a chaotic scene, Sunzi suddenly got an idea activated her, which mowed and let out a roar that scared everyone half to death. They felt the gentle, honest older sister never had such presence. Sunzi pulled Wu Jin over and told everyone that the two of them were lovers. Seeing Wu Jin about to explain, Sunzi quickly said, "Your pants are torn at the bottom. Go change into another pair in your room to get him to leave." Then she argued with everyone alone and drove them out. Only her mother, standing silently in the back, understood what was really happening. Sunzi immediately went to her room to change, while Wu Jin, after changing his pants, came to confront Sunzi. In a panic, Sunzi had no choice but to jump out the window and pretend to be sorting trash at the collection station. Her husband's family saw her and thought they had wrongly blamed Sunzi. At that moment, her mother stepped forward and said she would deal with the three of them, saying she would not let them continue to torment her daughter, which scared them into fleeing in a hurry. The mother and daughter went to the hospital and saw that today Sunzi had let go of all the grievances she had endured for years at her husband's house by pretending to be her younger sister. Her mother expressed support for her daughter to continue doing so. Taking advantage of the momentum, Sunzi, in the identity of the younger sister, called the terrible husband and threatened that the mother-in-law's family would pay for tormenting her sister. This action of hers frightened them. The next day they cooked a hearty breakfast for the sister-in-law, washed clothes, and apologized to Sunzi. Sunzi returned to the shared rental apartment, preparing to hand over the dirty money to the company's ethics committee to report them. At that moment she ran into Wu Jin. He questioned Sunzi about why she lied that they were lovers. Thinking of how her real sister truly liked Wu Jin, in a moment of urgency she confessed to him. "I truly like you." The 35-year-old single man, being confessed to for the first time, did not refuse but only showed a confused expression and questioned the sincerity. Sunzi even presented evidence for him to see. Noticing the man approaching a dangerous area, she hurriedly pulled him behind her. This action made Wu Jin feel a wave of warmth. Seeing Sunzi's sincere gaze, he couldn't bear it and avoided it. At this moment Sunzi remembered the important matter regarding her sister and hurriedly left, first leaving Wu Jin confused, recalling the time spent with Sunzi. It turned out Sunzi had unconsciously left a deep impression in his heart. At this moment he felt a little confused. On this side, Sunzi went to find a senior executive to report the situation about the dirty money, and that executive turned out to be the husband of Miss Tiri, department head Chae Tsangmin. As soon as Sunzi finished presenting, she left. The director who had met her at the police station also appeared. It turned out that department head Chae Tsangmin was the one behind everything. Just as Sunzi went downstairs, she ran into Miss Tiri. Tiri told Sunzi to submit the resignation letter of the female attendant who had caused her to be imprisoned. Unexpectedly, Sunzi refused to carry out her order. Tiri was so angry that she laughed out loud. Seeing that she was about to use her skills, Zhang, who was hiding behind, shouted loudly, "The chairman is coming." This helped Sunzi avoid a blow. Zhang went to find Sunzi, saying he wanted to invite her for coffee. Seeing him shyly take out 3,001, Sunzi stuffed 10,000 into his hand, told him to spend more frugally, then walked away. This made the rich young master very touched, and he immediately called his father, saying he had made up his mind to take over his father's throne. Hearing that his son's motivation to strive was because of a woman, the chairman could only sigh. There's always someone who can handle the tough ones. The next day, Sunzi's mother-in-law brought gifts to see Wu Jin to apologize. As a result, she met Wu Jin's mother. At that moment, Wu Jin's mother also wanted to ask about the family background of her future daughter-in-law. The mother-in-law told her son about the relationship between Wu Jin and Sunzi, saying she wanted to seek justice for Sunzi, because of all she had sacrificed for her sister all this time. So the terrible husband went to find Wu Jin to reason with him, complaining that his sister-in-law getting drunk had made his own wife work. He told Wu Jin that as a man he should properly manage his woman. Unexpectedly, Wu Jin didn't explain their relationship, but instead defended her, saying that if he wasn't satisfied, they could settle it with a fight. Seeing Wu Jin's muscular build, Sun Zi's terrible husband immediately became cowardly and felt humiliated. He went to a friend's restaurant to drink and drown his sorrows. After getting drunk, he lamented to the waitress. Dong also felt wronged because others looked down on her due to her figure. Unexpectedly, Chundae suddenly stepped forward and hugged her tightly. Surprised by this unexpected affection, Dong immediately responded. After that, Dong gave him a black card telling him to spend as he pleased. It turned out Dong had a rich stepfather. Because she hated her mother, she always refused to use that card. Chundae thanked Dong and then went off to buy a pile of designer goods for the family. The mother-in-law saw the 580,000 won price tag on it and thought to herself that she'd better quietly return it to save it for her daughter. But in the end, she was informed that only Dong the cardholder could return it. So she went to the restaurant where her son-in-law worked to ask what was going on. Just then, she saw the name tag of the waitress. It was Dong, the very person she was looking for. Thanks to her family background and the help of her brother-in-law's position, the woman became a boss overnight and was served at home. Chundae, having lost his status in the family, complained to Dong. Seeing the man drunk, desperate for his wife's recognition, Dong angrily took Chundae's phone and called his wife, angrily scolding her. "You have a good husband, but don't know how to cherish him." Hearing this, Sun Zi felt confused and called her mother-in-law and sister-in-law to go look for him. Meanwhile, Chundae's ex-lover also tried calling him but couldn't get through. She checked the surveillance cameras and saw him hugging Dong. Minsu, the lady boss, was furious and immediately drove to her restaurant. As soon as she entered, Sun Zi and the others followed. The moment Minsu came in, she started punching and kicking Chundae, shouting, "10 years of affection between us is worth less than a ton of Dong's meat." Seeing this scene, Sun Zi was so angry that she fainted on the spot. Her mother hurried over and, seeing her daughter suffer such humiliation, charged forward and fought the two without falling behind. The mother-in-law saw the situation and hurriedly pulled her son away from the scene. Back home, Sun Zi kept cleaning the house to numb herself. Her mother saw her working absent-mindedly and told her to go back to work at the company. Unluckily, when Sun Zi went to work, she received a notice of dismissal. She knew it was Thierry taking revenge on her. Sun Zi went to find Thierry, begging her to let her continue flying. Before she could finish her words, Thierry slapped her, cutting her off. When Thierry wanted to strike again, Wu Jin arrived in time to stop her, telling Thierry that Sun Zi was his fiancée. He said he would take Sun Zi with him to assume a position in the new department the company had established. He told her not to torment Sun Zi anymore. This triggered Thierry's jealousy. It turned out she and Wu Jin had been childhood sweethearts. She had always liked Wu Jin, but had been rejected by him on the grounds that he didn't get close to women. The next day, Sun Zi returned to the company to pack up her things. On her way out, she was deliberately tripped by her former underlings. Everyone sneered coldly and no one helped her. At that moment, Wu Jin appeared, helped her pack, and publicly invited Sun Zi to be the chief flight attendant of the #1 plane in the new department. Then he took her up to the rooftop, the very place where Sun Zi had confessed to him before. During this time, Wu Jin came to understand his true feelings. He confessed to Sun Zi and expressed his affection for her. While walking down the street, Sun Zi looked in the mirror and resolved to change herself to learn her younger sister's resilience and no longer be weak. Seeing that she had completely changed, she went to find the contractor who had scammed her out of money before. Sun Zi's domineering attitude scared the woman so much she peed her pants. Seeing that Sun Zi truly intended to call the police, she hurriedly returned the money. That night in the shared rental apartment, Sun Zi couldn't sleep, recalling the scene from that night, clenching her teeth in anger. She took out a kitchen knife to sharpen it. Wu Jin heard strange noises, came out and saw this frightening scene. When discovered, she said she was just exercising. The next day, Wu Jin invited her out to eat. It turned out he thought Sun Zi's sharpening the knife in anger the night before was because of him. that after confessing he hadn't made any real effort to pursue her, so he deliberately invited her to apologize. Seeing the golden glass of wine, Sunzi's eyes showed a trace of confusion as she recalled the scene of her terrible husband and Dong sharing wine mouth to mouth. Sunzi's hand trembled and she accidentally broke the wine glass. Feeling unsettled, she made an excuse to leave first. Wu Jin hurried to chase after her but was stopped by Sunzi's scheming roommate, who told Wu Jin that Sunzi's recent strange behavior was because she was suffering from amnesia. It turned out the roommate Chu Jin had secretly taken on side jobs without the company's knowledge, had been discovered by department head Chae Song-min, and was threatened by him to scheme and drive Sunzi away. The next day, while rehearsing for the commercial shoot, they noticed Sunzi secretly practicing opening and closing the emergency door through a video. Wu Jin saw that she even forgot such basic professional skills and became more convinced that she was suffering from amnesia. When the official filming started, Sunzi still couldn't open the emergency door. Afraid she would be exposed, Wu Jin requested a break. He quietly took her hand and guided her through it once. The intimate contact made Sunzi feel a little strange inside. After returning home, Wu Jin even specially prepared brain-boosting food for her and used the excuse of playing games with Sunzi to help her train her brain. Sunzi's skillful gaming was misunderstood by Wu Jin as her having already studied ways to prevent amnesia. On the third day, Sunzi received a notice for a medical checkup, but she was the only one in the company who had to go. Although she didn't understand what was going on, she still completed the checkup. On the other side, Thierry outwardly did charity work to restore her image. Because she didn't receive her father's support, she returned to the company and secretly conspired with her husband to harm her father and seize the chairman's position. They faked evidence that the chairman had used secret funds to support the No. 1 plane project, which was under investigation. The son-in-law even pretended to casually suggest that the chairman go abroad to avoid trouble. Before leaving, the chairman visited his son, who was undergoing special training before assuming his position. For the first time, he didn't scold him but instead encouraged and motivated him. He also sought out Wu Jin, asking him to take good care of the two sisters while he was away. Wu Jin received a call from Thierry. Using her father's situation as an excuse, she pretended to be heartbroken and arranged to meet him, deliberately trying to seduce Wu Jin. Meanwhile, department head Chae Song-min watched the scene on the surveillance monitor and laughed lewdly. The next day, the company urgently convened a board meeting. The couple had already successfully planted their people and appointed the chairman and vice chairman. Chu Jin impersonated Sunzi to go to the hospital and get the checkup report. Unfortunately, she ran right into Sunzi. It turned out that the person who had helped Sunzi register for the medical exam was Chu Jin. Only then did Sunzi realize that Chu Jin had always wanted to drive her away to replace her as the company's representative. When Sunzi returned to the company to look for her younger sister's previous medical report, Thierry, looking like the victor, came to warn her to stay away from Wu Jin and also said she would destroy the No. 1 plane project. Distracted, Sunzi went home to visit her daughter. Downstairs, she ran into her terrible husband, kneeling on the ground looking like a homeless man. It was heartbreaking to see. As expected, after seeing this, Sunzi's compassion welled up. As soon as she helped him up, he stood right up. Sunzi told him to just go home first. His mouth refused, but his body was very honest, helping Sunzi carry her bag and going home right away. Facing his mother-in-law's scolding at home, he knelt down crying, saying that their daughter couldn't be without her father. Seeing his eyes, Sunzi softened as well. The two went to their room. Chundae tried hard to explain that it was only the first time. After speaking, he put on a hat and dressed up as a clown, even taking out a coin. It turned out that back then he had worked as a clown and met Sunzi. It was this very 101 coin that had brought the two of them together. In the end, for the sake of her daughter, Sunzi still chose to forgive him. She went to find her mother to apologize, saying that no matter how much she resembled her sister, she was still a soft-hearted and foolish woman. Her sister-in-law and Taeyong were part of the same batch of newly hired flight attendants. The mother-in-law took advantage of her relationship with Do-hee to get her daughter into the central apartment. Knowing that she was a relative of Do-hee's, Taeyong hurried to befriend her and even found out that Do-hee had a twin sister. The next day, Taeyong used his connections to get Do-hee's personal file left at the company. but the file stated she was an only child. This made him curious and want to verify her identity. He asked Sunzi's sister-in-law to take him to the bathhouse where Sunzi's mother worked, planning to see the twin sisters' face there. This shocked Taeyong. The two sisters looked exactly alike. He wanted to ask why the older sister pretending to be Do-hee was hiding her family relationship. Just then he saw Sunzi hurrying off and followed her to the women's restroom at the train station. He hid at the corner of the wall. Sunzi went into the restroom, changed into different clothes, and came out. Taeyong waited for 2 hours without seeing her, so he was about to call her. At that moment, the phone rang from the corner of the wall. He saw Do-hee's older sister answering the call. Sunzi directly called his name, leaving him stunned. When Sunzi transformed back into the younger sister from the restroom, Taeyong, hiding in the corner, finally learned the truth. That day, Sunzi's mother went to pick up her granddaughter after school and discovered Dong following the child. It turned out Chundae kept avoiding Dong's calls, so Dong followed his daughter to find their home. She presented a spending bill demanding he pay it or else she'd go after his wife. Chundae had no choice but to go home and steal Sunzi's money, giving all his wife's savings to Dong and saying the two of them should just cut ties. Realizing where the money came from, Dong completely saw through his awful nature. At that moment, Minsu called, crying that her husband had died and she needed his comfort and help. Without looking back, Chundae ran off immediately, his heart completely cold. Dong called to inform Sunzi that her terrible husband had stolen money to pay her. She felt both of them were victims and didn't want Sunzi to be deceived by this bad man. She said he was heading to Minsu's place to help with the funeral. Hearing this, Sunzi was devastated, unable to stand steady, and hurried to the scene. She saw her husband mourning like a family member of someone else. When he saw his wife arrive, he still tried to justify himself, saying he was just helping a friend. Seeing Minsu being abused by her in-laws, he turned around to protect another woman, completely uncaring. Sunzi's heart was bleeding. Sunzi transformed back into her younger self, dazed, and returned to the apartment to see Woo Jin waiting for her. She couldn't hold back her tears. Woo Jin wrapped his arms around Sunzi without asking anything, only said one sentence. "I will protect you." Sunzi leaned on his shoulder and finally burst into sobs. Early the next morning, Woo Jin made a loving breakfast for Sunzi. His elegant cooking skills made all the female flight attendants admire Sunzi. Sunzi left early and missed Woo Jin's heartfelt gesture. To avoid affecting her sister's career, Sunzi pulled herself together and stayed up all night to draft a proposal suggesting free distribution of rich bento meals on the new flight route to improve reviews, while also reducing the ingredient cost per meal to only 2,001. To verify this plan, Sunzi and Woo Jin personally went to the market to shop. Seeing how experienced Sunzi was in selecting ingredients and bargaining with vendors, she wanted to save money and personally handle the ingredients. Her masterful knife skills left Woo Jin stunned. The serious woman deeply captured Woo Jin's gaze. After cooking, Woo Jin tasted a bite and couldn't stop praising it. When Sunzi wanted to raise 2 glasses in celebration, Woo Jin panicked, thinking of Sunzi's alcohol-induced amnesia and that she couldn't drink. He immediately snatched the glasses and drank every last drop himself. Sunzi thought he liked drinking, so she called for a performance to pour him a drink. Woo Jin didn't drink alcohol but still had to continue finishing the glasses. Because he wasn't good at drinking, he accidentally let slip that he didn't care about Sunzi's condition. What he liked was her kind heart. Sunzi also felt the love Woo Jin had for her and was deeply moved. The next day, Sunzi agreed to bring her daughter to visit the company. But while Sunzi was carrying miscellaneous items up to the rooftop, terrace group suddenly appeared, frightening her into hiding in a corner, too scared to make a sound. Meanwhile, her mother and daughter arrived at the company and called Sunzi, but no one answered. Just then, Woo Jin passed by, recognized them as Dozi's mother and daughter, and formally introduced himself before taking them on a tour of the company on Dozi's behalf. After escaping danger, Sunzi found them at the cafeteria and joined them for lunch. Taeyong followed them to the hospital, saw the name on the hospital room was Sunzi, and got a headache. After Sunzi left, he sneaked in. Even though he had mentally prepared himself, he was still stunned with fear upon seeing a woman on the hospital bed who looked exactly like Sunzi. The jerk had just finished arranging the funeral for the madam, and thinking that the daughter would quit school and go live with her maternal grandmother, he said that no one was home and invited the woman to eat before leaving. Unexpectedly, Sun Zi returned home early with her daughter and found an extra pair of women's shoes at the door. She immediately told her daughter to go play at a classmate's house first. Although Sun Zi had a bad feeling deep down when she saw her husband sitting on the bed intimately feeding that woman, she furiously stormed in and cursed the jerk. Sun Zi's husband defended himself, claiming the two of them had a pure friendship. It was obvious he was insulting the audience's intelligence. Minsu bluntly said, "Before I didn't have time to think about other things. Now that I'm single again and have quite an inheritance, it's hard to say." This is clearly a declaration of war against Sun Zi. Sun Zi picked up a bucket of dirty water and poured it over the two of them. It turned out that Sun Zi had taken advantage of the time before they left to transform into the younger twin sister. Furious, she scolded them for tormenting her sister and declared she would never forgive the two. The next day, Sun Zi appeared as the younger sister and went to an old friend, causing chaos at Minsu's restaurant. Sun Zi stepped forward and delivered a powerful kick, then announced that from now on the workers would eat 3 meals a day here and the costs would be covered by that vixen. She would also file a lawsuit on behalf of her sister to demand compensation. Minsu believed that Sun Zi had no evidence and was slandering her, stating clearly that she only had a friendship with Chunde. Unexpectedly, Sun Zi produced the messages between the two. Upon seeing the sweet words exchanged, both were dumbfounded. She then threatened Chunde to return all the money stolen from her sister, or she would make them famous online. The next day, Chunde came to Sun Zi, who was pretending to be the younger sister, and presented the divorce agreement that had already been stamped, using it to threaten Sun Zi into accepting his so-called pure friendship with Minsu. But at this point, Sun Zi had completely lost all hope in this jerk. After changing her clothes, Sun Zi went to find him at Minsu's place. Chunde thought she had softened and came to beg him to come home. Unexpectedly, Sun Zi threw the signed divorce agreement at him and shoved the jerk toward Minsu, saying, "From now on I will start living my own life." Meanwhile, the couple Thierry and her husband, having taken over the company, were feeling anxious. Knowing her husband hadn't sent her father abroad, she angrily beat him with her handbag and scolded him as useless. Kang Min could only endure her insults. At that moment, the chairman called to ask her what was going on with the company. Thierry made an excuse to meet and explain things to him. Then she turned around and reported him to the prosecutor's office, sending people to arrest her own father. As it turned out, the chairman had anticipated this and escaped through the back, witnessing everything. While fleeing, he suddenly collapsed in pain on the ground. That night, Terrage's secretary went to a motel and saw the chairman suffering from appendicitis. He remembered how when his own father was seriously ill, the chairman had made an exception and hired a private plane for him to return home. Because of that, he owed the chairman a favor. Knowing the hospital was filled with Terrage's informants, he had no choice but to wait until morning to find Wu Jin, the only person the chairman trusted. Everyone in the apartment had gone out. Wu Jin had no choice but to bring the chairman into the room first. At that moment, Sun Zi brought her daughter to visit the shared rental apartment. Wu Jin took Sun Zi to see the chairman, who was seriously ill and bedridden. After checking the pulse for a while, Sun Zi identified the chairman's pain point and clearly understood the illness. She told Wu Jin to prepare a pile of ingredients and medicine. Wu Jin was momentarily stunned and didn't know how to react. What followed was a series of acupuncture, acupressure, and herbal preparation techniques that left Wu Jin dumbfounded. After the treatment, the chairman clearly improved a lot, making Wu Jin genuinely admire Sun Zi's medical knowledge. It turned out that all of this stemmed from problems her family members had encountered in life. Sun Zi had become a skilled doctor out of necessity. Next, Wu Jin was worried that information might leak from the apartment. Sun Zi suggested moving the chairman to her mother's house so they could conveniently care for him. So they took advantage of the time before their co-workers returned and secretly moved the chairman. However, Chu Jin came back early and saw the scene, even taking a photo to send to Chief Che Tsongmin. Meanwhile, the shameless mother-in-law forced her already divorced daughter-in-law to continue paying insurance for her. Sun Zi's mother grabbed her and cursed her as a beast. Sunzi also became tough and kicked her out. While packing, the mother-in-law took everything of use belonging to Sunzi and discovered a wristwatch hidden on top of the wardrobe. At the same time, the new airline project Woojin was in charge of made progress, and an announcement was made that the company would be selling the project. Upon seeing the personnel appointment list, Sunzi realized that Chief Chae Song-min was Thierry's husband, the very woman she had reported earlier. It turned out the real clown was none other than Sunzi herself. She angrily tore up the announcement, wrote a resignation letter, and stormed in, calling out Thierry's name with full momentum, openly declaring war on her, and stating that she would protect the new airline project. It was the first time anyone had dared to openly oppose Thierry, prompting applause and cheers from everyone behind her. After that, Woojin, despite Thierry's desperate pleas, submitted his resignation, leaving her alone, screaming out a song. Even Taeyong, who had never dared to disobey his sister, also resigned to join Sunzi and form a new team to pursue his dreams. Jebin replaced Sunzi as the company's representative. Thinking her springtime had finally arrived, she ended up receiving a series of slaps, forcing her to sabotage Sunzi's team. With a bruised and swollen face, she saw everyone else happily laughing and celebrating. Unable to stand it, she led a group of flight attendants to block Sunzi's team from using the locker room and restroom. Chief Chae Song-min even demanded they vacate the company within a month. He also discovered discrepancies between Sunzi's current and previous health check reports. The result indicated that someone who looked exactly like her had gone for a health check in her place. On the other side, after Chundae and Sunzi submitted their divorce papers, he immediately ran off to live with Minsu. But his happy days quickly came to an end. When Minsu came home and saw the house looking like a pigsty, she exploded in fury, grabbed his ear, and forced him to clean immediately. In no time, Chundae became like a housekeeper, mopping the floor and being bossed around like crazy by Minsu. The next day, Chundae returned to the restaurant and could only hide in a corner munching on bread to fill his stomach. Minsu caught him, snatched the bread away, and wouldn't let him eat enough to gain weight. When Thierry heard that Woojin was calling for investments to buy back the new airline project, she smiled wickedly, a scheme brewing in her heart. The next day, Woojin received a proposal letter inviting them to attend a dinner party as part of a collaboration. When Sunzi appeared before Woojin in a stunning evening gown, he was left speechless. Taeyong also learned from the team leader that this dinner party was a scheme orchestrated by Thierry. Upon arriving at the venue, someone took Sunzi away separately. The investor, upon seeing Sunzi, began touching her inappropriately and even pulled her forcefully into his arms, causing the crowd to burst into laughter. Luckily, Woojin arrived just in time to stop it, landing 2 punches on the investor and knocking him to the ground. Woojin faced the security guards alone, and Taeyong rushed in to help. At that moment, Thierry watched the scene from upstairs, her hands trembling in anger. Seeing Woojin get injured while protecting her, Sunzi was heartbroken. As their eyes met, the love between them drew them closer. Overcome with emotion, Woojin couldn't help but lean in and kiss her. But at that crucial moment, Sunzi suddenly remembered her younger sister and stepped back. Taeyong later confronted Woojin, blaming him for Thierry's relentless torment towards Sunzi. He hoped Woojin would stay away from Sunzi and warned that there were many truths about her that he wouldn't be able to accept. Woojin looked confused upon hearing this. Back home, Sunzi was restless and began cleaning the house. Even her daughter noticed and said that Uncle Woojin liked her mom, not Dozy. When she saw Woojin's call, Sunzi panicked and turned off the phone. But a moment later, she couldn't resist turning it back on to hear Woojin's heartfelt voicemail confession. He said if she felt the same way, he would always be waiting for her at the park in front of her house. Just like that, Woojin waited alone, deeply in love. Sunzi also couldn't sleep, spending the night thinking, recalling all the small moments they had shared during this time. By the time morning arrived, she could no longer deceive herself. When she ran to the park thinking he had already left, she turned around to see Woojin walking toward her, finally speaking the words he had held in his heart for so long. Before he could finish, Woojin expressed his joy with a kiss. At that very moment, as if telepathically connected, Sunzi's younger sister opened her eyes in the hospital. And just like that, the two of them began their first date. They went to the seaside and had a great time together. For the first time, Woojin experienced the joy of being in love. That evening, after listening to Wu Jin sing a heartfelt love song, Sunzi wanted to reveal her true identity. Just then, her mother called to inform her that her younger sister had woken up. The two had no choice but to end the trip early. Minsu discovered that her custom-made luxury handbag was being sold on a second-hand website. It turned out that Chunde, trying to show off his perfect life, had arranged to meet his daughter and used the money from selling the bag to buy her a gift. Minsu called and scolded him harshly, terrifying him so much that he didn't dare pay attention to his daughter and rushed back to report. The mother-in-law, seeing her son come home bruised, scolded Minsu. Minsu said nothing and directly called security to kick the old woman out. Recently, Terij had been continuously provoked and was on the verge of losing her mind. When her husband came to comfort her, she slapped him and made him kneel in front of the maid. From the look in his eyes, it was clear the fake husband was about to explode. He ordered Jebin to find information about Sunzi's mother so Director Hong, under his command, could carry out the next step of their plan. He then followed Sunzi's mother to the hospital and discovered that Sunzi and Dozi looked exactly the same. He immediately realized the secret of the two switching identities. Che Tsongmin smiled wickedly, as if he had come up with a perfect scheme. The chairman told Sunzi to call Taeyong over. He had found out that the one behind all of this was his own daughter. He hoped his son could conduct the new aviation project transparently. To prove his innocence, Taeyong sought out the former flight attendant who had water splashed on her face by Terij and asked her to prove that Terij's apology was merely an act. Terij even wanted to fire her. The news spread all over the internet, and Sunzi was also dubbed by netizens as an angel flight attendant. The phone rang non-stop with calls from people wanting to invest in their project. Wu Jin also received a call from a famous local investor. That evening, he invited Sunzi out and gave her a pair of rings left by his biological mother. Sunzi was wondering whether the rings were for her or her sister. She found it hard to refuse, so she used work as an excuse, saying it was inconvenient. She then wore the ring on a necklace. After Wu Jin visited the chairman, he took Sunzi's daughter home and ran into Sunzi sorting garbage. The two were immediately stunned. She quickly explained that she was Dozi's twin sister. However, the role switch confused the naive little girl who couldn't tell them apart. Sunzi even accidentally spoke in her sister's voice. Luckily, the clever daughter covered it up. Everyone began preparing for the first test flight. Dozi also started doing her best to undergo rehabilitation training. However, after learning that her sister had quit the airline, she was extremely angry and clashed with Terij, ruining the result of 10 years of patient endurance. Dozi hastily asked her sister whether she had taken the money she was told to get. Sunzi hurried back to retrieve it, only to find the money had mysteriously disappeared. Her daughter analyzed the situation and concluded that only Sunzi's mother-in-law could have taken it. Sunzi called Chunde to go look for her mother-in-law together. The old woman denied everything to the death. Sunzi went into her room and rummaged through everything to search. In the end, she found the money under the mattress. The mother-in-law was scolded harshly but couldn't say a word in response. Her younger sister recovered the 100 million but still complained it was too little, telling her sister to threaten Director Hong for more money and to beg Terij for forgiveness in order to return to the company. But Sunzi knew her sister was going down the wrong path and refused. Hearing that, her sister got so angry she screamed. Meanwhile, Wu Jin recalled the cause of his biological parents' death. A plane crash that occurred during the first test flight. Therefore, he brought Sunzi to a place he had prepared in advance, knelt on one knee, and took out a necklace to propose to her. Sunzi thought of her sister's fierce face and didn't dare make a decision. She had no choice but to ask for time to think it over before giving an answer. The first test flight mission arrived on schedule. Sunzi's family and the chairman also came to show support. At that moment, an uninvited guest showed up. Everyone nervously tried to block Terij from view. Luckily, Wu Jin appeared and drove her away. After the flight ended, Wu Jin gave Sunzi a commemorative gift. At this moment, Taeyong also learned from his brother-in-law that Terij's older sister was actually the major shareholder behind the new flight project. This move caught everyone off guard. Sunzi saw that the day her younger sister would recover was near. She recalled the times when she had been tormented by Terrage in the past. She decided to pave the way for her sister before giving up her position. The next day she and Wu Jin announced the establishment of an employee union to protect the rights of the staff. Terrage, upon hearing the news, angrily stormed over to confront Sun Zi. Just as she was about to lash out, she noticed the media filming and had no choice but to swallow her anger. Sun Zi went home and took out the necklace Wu Jin had used to propose. She discovered a USB hidden inside. When she opened it, it turned out to be a proposal video recorded by Wu Jin. After watching Wu Jin's heartfelt confession, Sun Zi was moved to tears. At that moment, she didn't know what to do with her own heart. Meanwhile, when Dozi tried on her uniform, she found a love letter written by Wu Jin in the pocket, and also heard the confession he had left on her phone earlier. Realizing this was the man she had longed for day and night, she immediately lost her composure. The twin sister, knowing that the male idol had proposed to her sister, who was pretending to be her, asked her sister to arrange a date between her and the idol. Sun Zi even gave Wu Jin a series of strange requests. It turned out her sister had only temporarily been discharged from the hospital after recovery, and had special requirements regarding UV rays and food. Though Wu Jin found it odd, he didn't think much of it. The next day, Sun Zi took her sister to the arranged location and saw Wu Jin holding her sister's hand. She felt a sense of disappointment in her heart. Her daughter even said it felt like the little mermaid being robbed of her prince. Dozi, seeing that Wu Jin could cook, said he was very attractive. Hearing those words, Wu Jin felt surprised. Dozi's forwardness seemed a bit unusual to him, but he didn't think too much of it. He even said Dozi seemed more confident than usual. Dozi then placed her hand on Wu Jin's thigh and said she accepted his proposal. After returning home, Sun Zi told her not to think about the money box anymore and to live well with Wu Jin. The next day, both families were discussing the engagement of the two. Wu Jin's mother said she would respect Dozi's wish to keep everything simple. The younger sister glanced at her older sister with resentment and said that marriage only happens once in a lifetime, so she hoped to have a beautiful memory. She wanted to hold a grand ceremony and appointed a famous designer to custom-make her wedding dress. Wu Jin was slightly surprised when he saw the exchanged glances between the two sisters. While having dessert after the meal, Sun Zi and Wu Jin's daughter were playing around and accidentally spilled ice cream on the younger aunt. Dozi's outburst shocked Wu Jin. In the bathroom, she angrily scolded her sister for letting the daughter get close to Wu Jin. She then told her sister to go back to the company and apply for leave. After the vacation ended, she would officially return to work. After returning home, Sun Zi prepared a lavish lunch for her colleagues to thank them for taking care of her during this time. But her daughter cried, saying that Wu Jin liked her mom, so why was he marrying the younger aunt? Sun Zi didn't know how to explain it. The next day, all the colleagues were very satisfied with the meal. In her heart, she felt overwhelmed with emotions and deep regret. After submitting the leave application to Wu Jin, Taeyong, who was hiding nearby, sensed that something was off. At that moment, the undercover team leader informed Taeyong that Terrage had discovered the chairman's hiding place, but it was already too late. Terrage and her accomplices barged into Sun Zi's mother's house and threatened the father to change the will, leaving all assets to her. When negotiations failed, she called the prosecutor to come and arrest him. Taeyong rushed to the scene, angrily scolded his sister for being heartless and vicious, and vowed to make her pay. Wu Jin and the others immediately used their connections to gather evidence to help the chairman escape prosecution. On the other side, Dozi went to Director Hong and used a photo she had taken of his secret counterfeit goods transaction to blackmail him for more money. That evening, when Wu Jin took Sun Zi home and heard her solemnly say goodbye to him, he felt an indescribable sense of sorrow. He rushed forward and hugged Sun Zi from behind, saying, "We're clearly about to get married, so why do I still feel so uneasy?" Upon hearing this, Sun Zi silently shed tears. Sun Zi returned to her role as a housewife, thinking of Wu Jin's tearful expression full of longing. At that moment, Chief Che Tsongmin came to find Sun Zi and called her by name. He played the recording of Dozi threatening for money and demanded that Sun Zi return the money she had previously received, or he would report her to the police. Taking advantage of Sun Zi's moment of inattention, he planted a listening device under the table and in her handbag. The next day Sun Zi went to confront her younger sister and questioned, "Why are you still doing this when you're about to marry Wu Jin?" Unexpectedly, her sister replied, "Marriage isn't a lifetime insurance policy. I want all of Wu Jin's status and money." In order to keep her sister out of danger, Sun Zi forcefully snatched her phone away. The following day, Wu Jin called Dozi and said he was waiting downstairs at her sister's place. Sun Zi had no choice but to hurriedly disguise herself as her sister to meet him. Wu Jin took her to his biological parents' grave and told her about his background. Sun Zi felt heartbroken over Wu Jin's tragic past. Wu Jin said, "It was your compassionate eyes that changed my view on staying single." The next day, Chae Tsongmin called Sun Zi demanding she return the previously received money and set a meeting location. Sun Zi went to the hospital to find the money box her sister had hidden. Dozi, preparing to be discharged, discovered the money had been taken by her sister and immediately requested her phone number be deactivated. That evening, the daughter, seeing that her mother hadn't returned, called Wu Jin for help. Meanwhile, after meeting Chief Chae Tsongmin, Sun Zi returned the money to him. He then demanded she hand over the USB. Sun Zi, completely clueless, said she didn't know anything and tried to leave, but as soon as she stepped out, she was kidnapped by someone in black who had been waiting. Wu Jin arrived just in time, blocked the vehicle, and without saying a word took on 10 men by himself. After a fierce struggle, he rescued Sun Zi and brought her home. Seeing that Sun Zi was in severe shock and burning with fever, Wu Jin tried calling Dozi, but her phone was already deactivated. Ignoring his own injuries, he gently took care of Sun Zi. Hearing Sun Zi murmur in her delirium, telling him not to leave and repeatedly calling out Wu Jin's name, for a moment Wu Jin thought it was Dozi. The next morning, Sun Zi had recovered. Seeing Wu Jin risk everything to save her made her feel confused inside. Wu Jin brought his father back from abroad to attend his engagement ceremony. Still worried about Sun Zi's condition, he called to check on her. On the other side, Dozi had just been discharged from the hospital but rushed back to work. Upon arriving, she immediately summoned a flight attendant into the office for a scolding. Wu Jin, watching from outside the door, was stunned. Back home, he sat absent-mindedly, constantly thinking of the older sister. The next day, Wu Jin took Sun Zi home to meet his parents. Everyone was lined up respectfully to welcome her, which made Wu Jin feel puzzled. A glance from the witch made everyone scatter in a hurry. When trying on wedding dresses, Wu Jin's mother even invited Sun Zi to come along. As everyone was admiring how stunning Dozi looked in the wedding gown, the witch noticed Wu Jin's eyes fixed on the older sister and quickly made up an excuse to call him inside to try on clothes. Sun Zi held Wu Jin's jacket and recalled the memories they had shared, intending to hang it up for him. Wu Jin rushed over and accidentally grabbed her hand. A jolt like electricity surged through both of them. Alarmed, Sun Zi ran away from the scene. Back home, Wu Jin was completely confused. Why did he feel nothing for the younger sister but couldn't stop thinking about the older one? Dozi was about to hold her engagement ceremony but didn't allow her twin sister to attend. When she saw Sun Zi waiting at the door, a look of disdain appeared on her face. She tried to pull Wu Jin away, but he shook her hand off. Looking at Sun Zi, Wu Jin began to waver inside. At the engagement ceremony, when it was time to kiss Dozi, Wu Jin hesitated and couldn't do it. Seeing that, Dozi boldly leaned in. Tiri, witnessing the scene, angrily walked away, only to run into Dozi's twin sister outside, and was immediately shocked. She quickly ordered an investigation into their background. The next day, Wu Jin asked Dozi out for a meal to apologize about the engagement incident. Afraid that a long night brings many dreams, Dozi invited Wu Jin to spend the weekend enjoying their own private world. Back home, Wu Jin was still troubled by it all. Sun Zi was preparing to launch her food truck business. She looked at the necklace and USB that Wu Jin had given her during the proposal. Thinking about the proposal video moved her deeply, but she couldn't bring herself to come between her sister and him. Taeyong heard that Sun Zi's food truck was about to open, so he called to say he'd come help on the opening day. Seeing Wu Jin walk in, he deliberately said, "Wu Jin, are you getting ready to consummate the marriage with the witch Dozi tonight?" Wu Jin hurriedly snatched the phone and hung up, angrily scolding him. "Why would you say something like that to Sun Zi?" Taeyong replied, "You like the younger sister, not the older one. So what if Sun Zi knows?" Those words left Wu Jin speechless. That night, the two drank wine at a hotel. The witch Dozi took the opportunity to sit on Wu Jin and tried to kiss him, but he turned away. He really wanted to tell her that he liked her sister but didn't know how to explain, so he could only say he wasn't ready yet. And just like that, the two slept in separate beds overnight. Thierry had someone investigate the background of the twin sisters. She handed the information to Wu Jin and said, Sun Zi had excellent academic achievements but gave up attending university for her younger sister. Later, she successfully interviewed to become a flight attendant but was obstructed by her sister. She said Dozi was a cunning and scheming person and advised him to think carefully about who he was marrying. When he returned to the company, he heard from his colleagues that the partner company had refused to provide in-flight meal services for them. The reason was that the witch Dozi had acted arrogantly in front of them, treating them like servants and barking orders. Everyone added. The angelic airline girl from before had disappeared. Wu Jin found it hard to believe when he heard this. When he went to talk to Dozi, she still kept her arrogant attitude. He told her that the small businesses agreed to cooperate because they were touched by her sincerity. He told her she had to prepare the in-flight meals for tomorrow's exhibition overnight. Only she could do it now. How could a witch whose 10 fingers never touch water understand these things? Furious, she stormed off to find Sun Zi and exploded in anger. Why does everyone always go to that goody-goody version of me? She told Sun Zi to sneak back to the company, finish the in-flight meals, then disappear. Wu Jin couldn't sleep, tossing and turning while thinking about Dozi working hard alone. Wanting to learn more about her, he decided to go to the company to help. But instead he saw Sun Zi and her daughter working. Sun Zi hurriedly explained, My sister finished it already but had to leave for something urgent, so she called me to help finish it up. And just like that, the two of them with their own thoughts kept busy until morning. Sun Zi wanted to wake her daughter up, but Wu Jin grabbed her hand and wouldn't let go. After spending the whole night together, Wu Jin had come to a realization in his heart. This selfish woman had taken all the credit for her sister's work and accepted everyone's praise as her own. Wu Jin, standing beside her, was full of doubt. It turned out he and Sun Zi had spent the whole night working on the food. Just as he was about to share his thoughts with Sun Zi, they were interrupted by a coworker's voice from outside. Sun Zi quickly took her daughter and left through the back door. But when the witch saw the oversized hat left at the scene, she realized Wu Jin had been with her sister all night. Dozi angrily called her sister to come to the company. On the staircase, she asked if her sister liked Wu Jin and scolded her. After the divorce, you want to compete with me over a man. Without waiting for an explanation, she slapped her sister. Just as she was about to slap her again, Wu Jin appeared in time to stop her. Seeing that Wu Jin ignored her feelings and only cared about her sister, the witch furiously asked if he liked Sun Zi. Unexpectedly, this time Wu Jin didn't hesitate and admitted it. The witch was so angry she fainted, though it turned out she was pretending in order to hide her embarrassment. When she got home, she cried and complained to Wu Jin's mother, demanding that the wedding be pushed forward so she could win over Wu Jin's wavering heart. Wu Jin's father also heard about it and came to scold him, but couldn't change his mind. Wu Jin sat alone until evening, then went to find Sun Zi and honestly confessed his feelings to her. Sun Zi was moved but didn't know what to do. At that moment, Dozi started pretending to have difficulty breathing again. Their mother informed Sun Zi about the situation. Sun Zi, believing she had caused her sister's condition, told their mother that she would clarify her relationship with Wu Jin. Wu Jin was sitting in the living room with Sun Zi's daughter watching a fairy tale when he accidentally pressed the wrong button on the remote. The TV suddenly played his proposal video. Wu Jin looked puzzled. Sun Zi quickly came out and turned off the TV, explaining that her sister had played it there, then hurriedly lied that she planned to remarry her ex-husband Chunde so that Wu Jin and her sister could be together. After following Madame Minsu, Chunde hadn't had a single good day. Seeing the two constantly arguing, Chunde could no longer endure it and finally exploded, regretting that he had foolishly abandoned his gentle wife. That evening, he brought flowers to find Sun Zi, begging for her forgiveness and asking to get back together, promising that he would never betray her again. But Sun Zi told him she already liked someone else. On the other side, Jebin was pushed to the brink by Thierry. By chance, she ran into Chunde after his failed attempt to remarry, and the two, sharing similar misery, happened to confide in each other. Early the next morning, Jebin woke up to find Chunde sleeping beside her. It turned out they had gotten drunk while venting their sorrows the night before. Jebin hurriedly got dressed in secret and left. Not long after, Jebin found out she was pregnant and sought out Chunde's strict mother-in-law to get his phone number. She then went to find Chunde and told him she was pregnant. Although he found it odd, he congratulated her and wished her a smooth delivery. It wasn't until Jebin mentioned the night they drank together that Chunde realized he was the father of the child. The next day, Jebin went straight to Minsu's house and had a direct conversation. Minsu furiously scolded her for being shameless and scheming. Jebin fired back, calling her a thick-skinned old fox, and even made the strict mother-in-law take care of her during postpartum recovery. She demanded that Chunde break up with Madame Minsu and take responsibility for the child. Truly, what goes around comes around. Plagued by guilt, Chunde went to a temple to live a life of hardship and repentance for his sins. Jebin asked the company for severance pay but was rejected. Left with no choice, she went to protest alone in front of the company gates. Thierry saw this and flew into a rage, about to take action, but was stopped by everyone. Otherwise, she would have ended up on the hot search again. Back in the office, she lashed out and beat her subordinates, then ordered someone to bring Dozy in. Without waiting for any explanation from the witch, she slapped her twice in the face out of fury. Then she grabbed a baseball bat and swept it sideways, knocking Dozy to the ground. Terrified, the witch betrayed Sun Zi and revealed the secret about the two of them swapping identities. Thierry, upon learning the truth, was so furious she laughed maniacally, realizing that she, a rich heiress, had been tricked by an older woman. Trying to win favor, the witch pledged her continued loyalty to Thierry and offered up the labor union with both hands. She then went to find Sun Zi, forcing her sister to send her daughter abroad to settle, claiming that only then would Wu Jin stop having other thoughts and that it would help her smooth things over with Thierry. Seeing her sister still lost and unrepentant, Sun Zi rejected her request and said she would make Thierry face legal punishment. The next day, as the union president, Sun Zi drafted a public statement exposing Thierry's authoritarian and tyrannical behavior. After that, she dressed in a flight attendant uniform and impersonated her sister to inform all employees to attend the press conference. Dozy received the announcement and immediately went to find Thierry to prove her innocence. Wu Jin arrived at the scene and felt like the old Dozy had returned. At that moment, Thierry led a group of henchmen to the scene and directly ordered Sun Zi to be captured. Wu Jin immediately took Sun Zi to hide in the emergency stairwell. He began to suspect that Dozy was actually the sister in disguise. Just as he was about to ask, voices were heard from upstairs. He quickly told her to run while he stayed behind to hold off the henchmen. After escaping, Sun Zi was picked up by Taeyong. Once she was safe, Wu Jin called her, but no one answered. When Wu Jin rushed to the food truck to find her, Sun Zi claimed she had been there selling the whole time and hadn't gone anywhere. At that moment, Dozy appeared, having changed clothes and wearing Wu Jin's coat. She explained to Wu Jin that someone had liked her in the past but had mistaken her for her sister. She also said that she and Wu Jin's parents had already scheduled their wedding for the following week. The next day, the labor union issued a notice of dissolution. The initiator was none other than Dozy. Everyone was buzzing about how Dozy seemed like a completely different person from the day before. Wu Jin also kept suspecting that the person from yesterday was actually Sun Zi. Right then, a group of Thierry's people entered the company lobby. What was unbelievable was that Dozy was among them. In his heart, Wu Jin realized that she was just using everything as a stepping stone toward capital and power. Taeyong angrily confronted Dozy, scolding her for destroying all the efforts Sun Zi had made. But Dozy, seeing Taeyong as just a new employee, didn't take him seriously and calmly said, "Wait until you're more seasoned before meddling in other people's business." Helpless, Taeyong went to the prison to beg his father to let him reveal his true identity and stand up to Thierry. But the chairman said it still wasn't the right time. They needed the support of the second-largest shareholder, who had remained anonymous for many years before having enough confidence to turn the situation around. After watching the news, Sun Zi rushed to find her sister to confront her. But Dozy said, "Can good people really change the world? Back then, our father was a police officer who died saving someone, but the person he saved didn't testify for him. Instead, our father was falsely accused, stripped of his position, and even our family was affected." At that moment, Taeyong discovered Sun Zi's food truck had been vandalized. When he told Sunzi, her sister just sneered coldly and said that in order to win Thierry's favor, sacrificing her was the only option. Sunzi rushed back and saw the mess at the scene, silently vowing that she would make them pay. Meanwhile, Wu Jin looked at photos of his dates with Sunzi and thought about how Dozi's mood had recently been so inconsistent. He became more convinced that they weren't the same person. So he decided to test Dozi. He invited her over and deliberately wore the couple outfit from their first date, then asked her what she thought of his outfit. Dozi said the outfit didn't suit his aura. Next, Wu Jin played a love song he had once sung to Sunzi. Dozi responded by saying she preferred classical music. Hearing that, Wu Jin became even more certain of his suspicion. He told Dozi that he was going to find Sunzi. At that moment, Dozi suddenly began singing the love song. It turned out she had secretly gone to her sister's house earlier, seen Sunzi's diary entries and their dating photos, and even found Wu Jin's proposal video. Just like that, she managed to deceive Wu Jin once again. After cleaning up the wreckage, Sunzi decided she had to prove that her father's fight for justice had been right. Disguising herself as her sister, she went to the bank to retrieve the items in the safety deposit box. After the staff confirmed there were no issues with the information, Sunzi successfully retrieved a USB drive. Back at home, she opened the USB and discovered it was full of receipts, videos, and photos documenting private transactions involving director Min and others. It turned out her sister had been using this evidence to blackmail them for money. Just then, Dozi also arrived at the bank to collect the items. But the bank employee looked puzzled and said, "Didn't you already come and take them?" Realizing what had happened, Dozi immediately called her sister, but it was too late. Sunzi had already handed the USB over to the police. Furious, the witch stormed over to confront Sunzi, yelling at her. But Sunzi replied, "Is money the only way to be happy? If you don't have money, does that mean you have to suffer?" That line made the witch explode with rage on the spot, furiously smashing things to vent. Thierry, upon learning that the police had received evidence of her husband's corruption, immediately chose to divorce him. She even warned him that if he tried to drag her down with him, no one would be able to save him. Director Min had long prepared a trump card. He handed Sunzi a surveillance video of Thierry saying she wanted to kill Dozi, telling her that if she wanted to protect her sister, she needed to clearly understand who the real enemy was. Seeing the footage and the scene of Thierry beating her sister made Sunzi furious. She recalled her father's words, "Never make decisions when you're angry. The wise thing is to find someone objective and rational to help analyze the situation." So Sunzi went to find Wu Jin and told him everything. Wu Jin said he would handle it properly. The next day, he and his adoptive father visited the chairman in prison and revealed that he knew about being adopted. It was time to lay his cards on the table and do something for the company. Soon after, the company received a notice for an emergency board meeting. Thierry was also very curious about the legendary second-largest shareholder. At that moment, Wu Jin entered the company with a commanding presence. Everyone was shocked to learn that Wu Jin was actually the company's second-largest shareholder. Thierry and Dozi rushed over in shock as well, especially since the chairman, being the largest shareholder, was under investigation. As the heir to the third-largest shareholder, Wu Jin had the right to appoint Taeyong as the new chairman of the board. Then he played the video of Thierry abusing Dozi and proposed that all of Thierry's positions be revoked. Thierry begged Wu Jin, but he coldly rejected her. Seeing Wu Jin so confident and powerful, Dozi couldn't help but curl her lips into a smile and immediately ran over to congratulate him. She even said, "Why didn't you tell me your true identity earlier?" With a confused expression, Wu Jin, after the proposal, brought Sunzi to the graves of his biological parents and revealed his true identity. This made Wu Jin even more suspicious that the previous Dozi was actually her sister in disguise. The witch, realizing she had been exposed, went to Wu Jin's mother to tattle. She claimed that the one causing Wu Jin's emotional wavering was her sister, and that since her sister was divorced, she might be clinging to Wu Jin in search of warmth. This angered Wu Jin's mother so much that she went straight to find Sunzi for a talk. She hoped Sunzi could voluntarily let go so Wu Jin could live a happy life. Hearing this, Sunzi's eyes filled with tears of sorrow. As she was absent-mindedly walking home, Taeyong stopped her. He brought flowers and confessed his feelings to Sunzi, saying that now he could bring her happiness. But Sunzi still turned him down, saying she already liked someone else. When Taeyong asked if it was Wu Jin, Sun Zi stayed silent. From a distance, Do Zi happened to witness the scene and upon returning home confronted her sister. "Are you a reincarnated fox spirit who seduces rich men?" After saying that, she slapped her sister and told her to stay away from Wu Jin. Sun Zi could no longer endure it and finally fought back. But the kind-hearted sister still softened and decided to back away. Yet Do Zi said, she and Wu Jin already spent the night together. Give up on this idea. Hearing that, Sun Zi was heartbroken beyond words. Wu Jin discovered that Do Zi's past and present medical checkups didn't match, confirming they weren't the same person. So he called Sun Zi to ask for her help with something. He then recreated the cooking process that Sun Zi had once taught him, hoping to bring back memories. But what he received in return was an emotionless response. Wu Jin did not give up. He took out a stack of beer mimicking the way Sun Zi mixed drinks and said that since she didn't suffer from alcohol-induced amnesia, she could drink as much as she liked. Seeing that she remained unmoved, Wu Jin expressed his true feelings, saying that although Sun Zi never admitted to impersonating her younger sister, her kind eyes couldn't fool anyone. Realizing she was about to be exposed, Sun Zi hurriedly tried to escape, but was pulled back by Wu Jin. Just as he was about to kiss her, she pushed him away and said, "Since you've already had a marital relationship with my younger sister, why are you still coming to tease me?" She then left Wu Jin standing there with a confused expression. Meanwhile, the chairman was declared innocent and released. He expressed his gratitude to everyone and felt satisfied with his son's performance. Waiting for his daughter to return home, he said he would forgive her and asked her to stop what she was doing. But the arrogant Thierry ordered the bodyguards to throw her father out, only to be thrown out of the house by the bodyguards herself. Elsewhere, the couple who had lost everything still couldn't stay quiet. She went to the rich young man who had long desired Do Zi, saying she would bring along Do Zi's twin sister, and invited them to enjoy this wild party together. The two exchanged glances and happily agreed. When Wu Jin returned home, he still couldn't forget Sun Zi, but since the wedding date was already set, it had to go ahead as planned. The little girl told her mother that Uncle Wu Jin didn't look happy at all. Upon hearing this, Sun Zi felt extremely uneasy, but couldn't find the words to respond. At the wedding, Wu Jin was constantly absent-minded while Do Zi took selfies alone. At that moment, two plainclothes police officers walked in and directly pointed at Do Zi, asking her to come with them to the police station to cooperate with an investigation. The wedding had to be cancelled. Sun Zi received the news and immediately went to the police station to understand the situation. She found out that Do Zi had violated aviation laws and could be sentenced. The kind and saintly older sister stepped forward and confessed, saying she would go to prison in her sister's place. But Do Zi believed that if her sister took the fall, it would mean that the person who had dated Wu Jin before was her sister, and she firmly refused. Back at the company, Wu Jin immediately held a meeting to arrange for internal staff to investigate all company cash flows in order to thoroughly uncover the corruption. As long as evidence of wrongdoing by Thierry and her husband was found, Do Zi's innocence could be proven. Taeyong also found the discarded computer that the chairman had used 10 years ago. After turning it on, he discovered a shocking secret. Meanwhile, Wu Jin, upon learning that Taeyong had found the chairman's old computer, immediately rushed over and found Taeyong in a devastated state. It turned out that Taeyong had found photos of the car accident scene where his mother died years ago. The gruesome images of her death made him nauseous. It was only then that he realized Wu Jin had hidden the news of his mother's death from him back then, causing him to miss the chance to see her one last time, all in an effort to protect him when he was still a child. It was also because of this that he had always harbored resentment toward Wu Jin. At the company, they also discovered that the mastermind behind the corruption was Thierry. The chairman didn't conceal anything and directly handed over the documents to the police. Taeyong then went to Wu Jin and told him a truth. He went to the company's security office and opened the surveillance video of the whistleblower meeting that Sun Zi had organized that day. They discovered that there were two dozes appearing in the company at the same time. Taeyong said that Sun Zi had been working in place of her sister, who had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and was unconscious. The one who had been dating Wu Jin all this time was the elder sister, Sun Zi. Upon learning the truth, Wu Jin breathed a sigh of relief. The doubts that had kept him sleepless for so long were finally answered, proving that his feelings for Sun Zi had never been wrong. The humiliation that the live-in son-in-law had endured was about to erupt, but he knew it wasn't the right time yet. He needed a perfect scapegoat. At that moment, the ever-opportunistic Dozy was still calling Thierry to curry favor, unaware that Thierry had already betrayed her. Thierry arranged to meet her at a remote villa. When Dozy arrived, what awaited her were the lustful eyes of the two wealthy young men. She revealed a look of disdain. Dozy hoped Thierry would help her cover up the suspicion of violating aviation laws. Thierry took the opportunity to tell her to call Sunzi over to serve drinks. The selfish younger sister, for her own benefit, knew it was a trap but still called and tricked her sister into coming. At the villa, Dozy drank with the two men, but halfway through she began to feel exhausted. With her usual alcohol tolerance, there was no way she could get drunk so quickly. One of the young men stood up and collapsed. Everyone realized something was wrong. Thierry then told them the wine had been drugged and said that once Sunzi arrived, she would set the place on fire and send them all to hell. The news would report that two wealthy heirs and a flight attendant were hosting a party when a fire broke out, killing them all. She blamed the two young men for blackmailing her over the police officer they had killed 14 years ago, saying this was her revenge. Dozy immediately understood that the police officer Thierry mentioned was her own father. Using the last of her strength, Dozy called Sunzi and told her not to come under any circumstances. Before she could finish her sentence, Thierry snatched the phone away. Sunzi couldn't clearly hear what her sister had said. After Wu Jin learned the secret about the twin sisters switching identities, he suddenly remembered that Sunzi had once confessed her true identity. While they were dating, it was just that he had always misunderstood. He rushed to Sunzi's mother's house and found out that both sisters had gone to meet Thierry. The mother also said she had a bad feeling. Wu Jin informed Taeyong to stall director Hong, who was preparing to flee, using both threats and temptations to make him confess that everything was a scheme orchestrated by department head Chae Song-min. With his lowly status as a live-in son-in-law in Thierry's family, he lived without dignity or position. His plan for today was to kill Thierry and then blame it on the two sisters who would have died in the fire. Upon learning the truth, Wu Jin immediately rushed to the villa. Meanwhile, Sunzi also took a taxi to the location. As soon as she stepped through the door, she saw everyone unconscious. Suddenly, Thierry strangled her from behind. Sunzi was no match for the deranged Thierry and was quickly choked unconscious. Thierry then set the villa on fire and walked out, satisfied, feeling exhilarated. Just as she was about to leave with Chae Song-min, he pointed a gun at her head. Thierry angrily shouted, "Do you want to die?" Chae Song-min slapped her in return, venting all the humiliation he had endured over the years. At that moment, Sunzi regained consciousness and found herself surrounded by flames. She got up and carried her sister out. After the two escaped, they saw Thierry desperately begging. Just as Chae Song-min pulled the trigger, Sunzi, ignoring the danger, rushed out to push Thierry aside, only to be hit by the bullet herself and collapse to the ground. Wu Jin arrived just then, knocked Chae Song-min to the ground, and saw Sunzi lying there shot and unsure if she was alive. Wu Jin held her in his arms, crying uncontrollably. When the police arrived, Chae Song-min panicked and fled to an open field. Reflecting on his life full of humiliation, he lamented that if he had met a woman like Sunzi, perhaps things would have turned out differently. He took out the suicide note he had written long ago, placed it on the ground, and ended his life with a gunshot. At the hospital, everyone was worried about Sunzi, who was undergoing surgery. After the emergency operation, Sunzi was finally wheeled out of the operating room. Dozy also confessed to her that she and Wu Jin had never actually dated, because from the beginning to the end, he only had feelings for Sunzi. Dozy then returned the wedding ring to Wu Jin and told him to quickly go see if her sister had regained consciousness. Seeing the one he loved so weak, Wu Jin cried and said he was afraid she would leave him just like that. The two of them then expressed their feelings and declared their love for each other. On the other side, Thierry also testified about the case from back then. Sunzi's father had been framed while trying to save her from some thugs. His honor, which had been wrongfully tarnished, was finally restored. Chundae also came to Chujin, who was having a prenatal checkup, to take responsibility as a father and a husband. Sunzi and Wu Jin held a simple wedding, and the family of three lived happily together. In the end, Sunzi also fulfilled her dream. Just like her younger sister, she became a flight attendant. This happy couple will continue flying together until the day they retire.